Albert wanted us to look at Berkshire Hathaway, Mr. Warren Buffett's share, and we assumed that he would have wanted to look at the Class B share. There's a couple of things that at the moment is a concern, Albert. One is the share is trading below the 40-week moving average, and that is negative. It tells me the long-term sentiment is negative. The other concern is the share is at a critical level where previously a support there around 196.55 was a level where every time there was a pullback, the share holders or the buyers in the share could find enough ammunition to lift the share price to higher levels. Again, there at late April, the share retraced, found at around the same level enough buyers to lift the share price to higher levels. But take note how that bounce was a little bit lower than the previous one. And that bounce was a little lower than the previous one. And that is seen as negative. So not only are there lower highs on the tops of the pattern, but I also have a possible double top here. And that possible double top will be confirmed when this trend line, that neckline of the double top, when that changes into a resistance, and that would be seen as negative, which means that that could take the price even lower to this support line. And this support line is, and that neckline, this level here, is a possible neckline of a triple top, which started there around November 2017 with a bounce, a retracement at around the same levels, a bounce, a retracement, and a support at around the same level as there in July, and a bounce again, and then retracement. So a triple top, head and shoulder, double top formations are formations that cannot be ignored and should be a warning for investors to say, hey, this share price is running out of steam, be careful. So Albert, I've got a consolidation below the 40-week moving average, which is my first warning. I've got a possible double top, which will be confirmed when the share price starts to consolidate below $196.91. And then I've got a triple top, which will be confirmed when the share price starts to consolidate below $186.14. So when will all this negativity be wiped off the table, and when will we be a little bit more optimistic? The first sign will be when the share starts to consolidate again above $216, again then about $219, and again at all these resistance levels of these shadows, which is waiting there around $223.72. So only when the share price starts to consolidate above those levels will my sentiment towards Berkshire Hathaway be a little bit more optimistic. So at the moment, Albert, I'll sit on my hands. I won't accumulate the share. Jeff wanted us to look at the NASDAQ, ticker NDX, an index that, the majority of the index is obviously technology stocks, the Facebooks, the Amazons, Twitter, all of those. Well, this week, something very interesting happened. On the NASDAQ, we can see that the index started to consolidate below its 40-week moving average. That is normally the first bell. That is the first warning to say, be careful, this index might be running out of steam. Be a little bit more cautious. Now we can see that we know that this is candle is in the making, because this candle will only be finished by Friday. Why? Because this is a weekly graph. But we can see within this long lower shadow on the candle, they protected it with everything they've got. So within the weakness, the index found enough buyers and enough buying power to lift it to a little bit of a higher level. Now look how this gap there, and that gap on the NASDAQ, Jeff, is waiting there between 7,645 and that high of 7,569. Now again, that gap or that window will close at some stage. It can take days, months, weeks, or decades. But that breakaway gap tells me that the sentiment was negative on Monday when this index opened up. So at the moment, my other concern, Jeff, is this, again, possible double top. And let me draw that in there for you, where the index found resistance at around the same levels it did the previous time there towards April. And if the index should retrace even further and then change this support there into a resistance, I mean, this index can go back to around 6,000. So if the NASDAQ index cannot find enough buyers here, 1 year to lift it to higher levels and above the 40-week, and then very critical level there is around 6,932, but cannot find enough buyers there to protect this neckline, NASDAQ might be in trouble. Hans wanted us to look at PSG, a share listed on our local exchange that currently needs no introduction, especially for the older generation that's been in the market for a while. So again, what is my first warning signal? The fact that my 40-week moving average has changed into a resistance. The share is down already 5% this week, last week down 5%, the week before 4%. So around 14-15% already down from the week of the 22nd of July. The momentum to the bottom is clearly in place. Yes, the critical support level is waiting there around 207.35 Rand. We can see that between the period of January 2018 and October 2018, that level of support, that trend line that I've drawn in there was protected every single time. And then when the share eventually managed to change the 40-week moving average into a support, it just rose to higher levels until it found resistance again and retraced. So PSG is approaching a critical level there around 207.16 Rand. If the share price cannot find enough buyers again to protect it, it might be in trouble. Now, what we can see, and I know I might be preempting it way ahead of time, is let's say the share price does exactly what it did here. It find some support there around 207 and just continue to bounce. We might be building on a possible head and shoulder formation. And we know head and shoulder formations are warning formations. And only when the share price starts to break this resistance of the shoulders into a support, we can take a sigh of relief. So PSG, it's going to be interesting to see what investors think of this share, if the buyers are prepared to protect it there around 207 Rand, and for how long they will protect it, and if the share price can eventually change that 40-week moving average into a support. And it might be a long wait, because remember, as technical analysts, we also go back to the share price, the historical share price, and see what the pattern of the share is. Almost like a psychologist for share prices. Go back, see what the previous patterns was, and then make a decision of what we think might happen if the support or resistance, or if those patterns are not broken to a side. Terry wanted us to look at General Electric listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, I mean, back in the day, even if I don't go, I mean, if I just go back to around July 2016, the share price traded around $31, and currently it's sitting around $9.46. Now, there's a beautiful cup and shoulder formation on General Electric, Terry. That is a positive formation. But unfortunately, the share price on a weekly graph first has to change that red line, that 40-week moving average, into a support. And we can see the 40-week moving average on this graph is it's a critical indicator, because every time the share price could not keep it as support, it retraced from it. It tested it again there in June 2017. It could not change it into support, and it plummeted to lower levels. Again, it could not into around the 29th of May 2018, tested the 40-week moving average, could not change it into support. Again in July 2018, it couldn't. Again in October 2018, almost like a boxer, you know, that keeps on being knocked out. It just can't change that 40-week moving average into a support. So eventually, year around January 2019, the share price managed to change that 40-week average into a support. And for technical analysts at the time, it was a sigh of relief that, hey, maybe this is the turnaround for the share price. And again, it tested it here around April 2019, and then the big thing happened. It changed it into a resistance in May 2019. And again, the bell rang for a warning. But the following week, the share price could find enough buyers. So it needs to change that 40-week into a support. But then we can see that trend line, that neckline for the cup and handle formation. Cup and shoulder, cup and handle formation. That neckline needs to change, or that needs to change into a support before we can say, hey, the formation is confirmed, the optimism is in play. And a cup and handle formation is a positive formation, Terry. So technically, when the share price starts to consolidate above $10.60, that formation will be confirmed and we might see higher levels. So wait for the 40-week is waiting at $9.98. Wait for $9.98 to change into a support, and then that neckline there around $10.60, and then hopefully that would be the turnaround for General Electric. Last but definitely not least, almost wanted us to look at Sasol. I think other than the gold price, Sasol is probably the share price on our exchange that are being spoken the most about at the moment. Now, we've said so many times, I'm not even going to repeat myself, the head and shoulder formation on Sasol is warning. And yes, I know it sounds impossible, but if this full formation play out, Sasol can go to 180 Rand. Don't try to catch a falling knife. We can clearly see the momentum to the bottom is in place. Wait for a turnaround candle on a weekly graph. Wait for a higher low. Wait for a tweezer bottom. Wait for some confirmation that the informed capital, the investors, the buying power out there is again believing in the share. At the moment, we can't see it. It's clearly in place to the bottom. So we have to wait for some sort of hint and confirmation that this is a turnaround. At the moment, it's not. And my conservative target, the length of that shoulder did play out at the moment. So hopefully this would be it. But we can't say that yet because it's clearly in place. So not only if I zoom back a lot more and we go back to the historical patterns, we can see that this high that was found a resistance there around September 2018 is a lot lower than the high there around July 2014. And that is a concern. So if this share price, okay, it's confirmed that neckline there around 382. And when that strong support there around 352 changed into a resistance, this lower high can take this share price a lot lower. So almost sit on your hands. Don't do anything at the moment. You know your candles. Wait for some sort of confirmation that there's a turnaround. Even on our stochastic indicator, we can see, despite the fact that it's oversold, the momentum to the bottom is still in place. Be patient, rather wait for the right time and then get in.